Welcome to the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast with Ron and Kristin, where leadership meets entertainment. This podcast features stories with names and certain aspects that have been changed to keep submissions private. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast. We are doing a Thanksgiving special. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. We are happy that you took time to tune in to listen to us on this special day. Ron and I are going to be discussing the importance of gratitude. That's why the title of this episode is Our World is a Dumpster Fire, so why should I be grateful? There are so many reasons why, and we will dive into all aspects of that. Now, this title is going to set the stage for us to give you the benefits of gratitude. Now, Ron, I know that it's easy to be grateful when things are going well, but how are you grateful? How does somebody stay grateful through a shitstorm?
Yeah, that's true. And that's the challenge, by the way. I heard someone say once they have the most trouble with gratitude when they're on top of the world or at the bottom of the world. When things are going great, you don't even think about it. You're just enjoying, your leisure life. And then when things get terrible, it's hard to be grateful. So I found that very poetic. But truthfully, let's be honest, we're living in very challenging, difficult times. There's turmoil everywhere, all through the country. We see division. We see inflation that continues to rise. We've got two major wars going on, and who knows where that's going to lead. There's supply chain issues. We've seen corruption in government like we've never seen before. Maybe it's because of social media. We're starting to see I guess at the end of the pandemic, that things were handled in a terrible way. It was just mishandled, and there was a lot of misinformation. So in the middle of all that, individual families are having trouble just providing the basic needs for their families. And here's the thing, people who prospered before, I talked to someone, it's like they're depleting their savings now, like it's just now really catching up. And other people are seriously having trouble just buying groceries. So what we have to acknowledge in order to, I think, self-preservation, we acknowledge that some of the stuff is just out of our control. But even though the underlying situation's out of our control, we do have the power to change our perspective. Things may be going on the outside, but you control the inside, and there's ways to do that. Kristin, back to you. Is there a time that you've exercised gratitude and maybe learned from a difficult situation?
Yeah, absolutely. I know the first thing that comes to mind for me was during the pandemic, I actually was happy to be working from home. It's something I had craved for a long time, to be around my family more often. But what it did for me was it took this marriage where I would say the majority of our marriage was a pissing contest. I've talked about this before, but it's very serious. And we were both overworked and just not happy people as a whole. During the pandemic, it allowed us to both slow down a bit. And for me specifically, I was able to reevaluate what was important to me. And really what that was God, family, country. And the action items that I specifically made changes on was I didn't like what my kids were learning in school. And I was made aware of that. So I pulled them out and started homeschooling. I didn't like how my husband was being treated at work and all other law enforcement officers. So I started speaking out about it and holding community leaders accountable. And also, I didn't like grinding myself into paste for a company really that didn't align with my values. And so when I look back, all of this was brought to the surface and I did something about it. And now I can say that I'm truly living this life of alignment and it feels amazing. And our marriage is in an amazing place. And I really didn't think that we would ever be able to get to this point.
So you realign priorities, which I think is great. I think when life doesn't align with our values, it makes things very challenging. But it sounds like you found a lot of gratitude in a difficult situation.
Yeah, and it did not come with without stress, right? Like there's a financial component. When you're no longer working in corporate America, you now have to reevaluate how you spend your money.
Yeah.
And the other piece is it's not easy to homeschool your kids either. So, and that's another component. Our house is very well utilized. There's a lot of traffic. And so there's all these stressors that do come along with these decisions that we've made as a family, but we don't regret it at all.
Yeah. Kristin, I'm grateful. This is a side note. I'm grateful for people who take action according to their values. So many people just sit and complain, but
Right.
they don't do anything about it. But you had to get some satisfaction knowing that this hard work, you mentioned your husband who was a police officer, and I'm in that world, and I saw all of the attacks and challenges to police officers, and
Yeah.
you had to take some satisfaction because you took a stand, and
Right.
that's that makes us grateful. Trust me, when you stand up for your values, it makes you very grateful that you did it. I've never had anyone walk away and going, I wish I hadn't took a stand for that thing that I
Yeah.
believed in.
Absolutely.
So Kristin, I
Absolutely.
don't want to this is the Thanksgiving season. I don't want to be too detailed with the story, but I think it really shows how sometimes in the most difficult circumstances, it can lead to gratitude. My daughter Haley was in a bad car accident in 2016. She was trapped in the car. There were so many things that happened, and we were grateful for her recovery. And I do want to assure everyone that don't know us that she's fully recovered, and even has my little grandson. So it's got a happy ending before we go too far into this story. But I want to tell you of a moment when all of that happened. I went into some kind of an emergency dad mode, and I was also academy director. So I'm working tirelessly. I'm making sure she's okay, they're okay, everybody's okay. I'm taking care of this. I'm handling. It was just full on. It was like I was in a sprint, and there was no finish line for me to slow down. At some point, someone either called or came to the hospital room and said, the salvage yard has Haley's car, and you need to come down and get her stuff because they're shipping it off wherever they send these cars. So my dad and my parents had come to South Carolina because of the accident. So he and I went together, and we drove to this salvage yard. My dad and the guy that ran the salvage yard, they just start talking over, maybe 15 feet from the car. They're chatting away. And I walk over. Kristin, I had not seen the car. And I looked inside. There was not room for a human being on the driver's side. And that's where my daughter
Wow.
was. Her husband was on the passenger side, and one of her best friends was in the back seat. But when I looked at that, in my mind, I'm like, where was she? Like,
Wow.
how is she alive? So this is probably pride, but I had a trash bag. So I'd gotten the stuff from the inside. I went to the trunk, and I couldn't do anymore. And I kneeled down on my knees, thanking God that I still had my daughter. And I wept, and I'm not a crier. My dad to this day doesn't even know any of this happened because he and this guy are just chatting away. And I sat there and cried for a while before I could get her belongings out of the trunk. And I probably had to get some more things out of the back seat.
Yeah.
But it is amazing. And I hope that even our nation, we've lost gratitude for the greatness of the United States of America.
Mm-hmm.
People have bought into the lies. And I really hope it doesn't take tragedy to realign our values and start to appreciate each other once again. But I did see a unity I'd never seen before right after 9/11.
Yes.
And again, I'm not wishing this, but I think the door's open for it. And so, keep an attitude of gratitude, but keep your family close and keep your priorities aligned, because it is challenging, but you have the power to determine your thought process, your values, your belief system. So anyway, I know that's a heavy story, but it certainly led to gratitude. And there were all kinds of situations with the government that I had to remind myself, hey, no matter what happens in 2 weeks, I've got direct deposit coming, those kind of
Right.
things. So
Right.
anyway,
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that story is very powerful, and it just shows how humbling life can be. Can
that's
bring
right.
us to our knees in a split second. And I appreciate you sharing that, because I know that took vulnerability, and it's your daughter. So we all know, us parents out there, there's a bond, no other bond like that of a child and a parent. So basically what you're saying is counting our blessings might just be the antidote we need.
Oh, that's exactly what we're saying. And Kristen, as always, we did some research and shows some of the benefits of having a lifestyle of gratitude.
Mm.
According to shareable.net, now this is an interesting study. High materialists are less happy, in part because they find it harder to be grateful for what they have. They're always thinking about, I want this, and they're never grateful for what they have. Psychologist Joanne Sang did a study which was detailed in a journal titled Personality and Individual Differences, and they found that participants who put a higher value on materialism had lower levels of gratitude, which led to less happiness in their daily lives. Do you find that interesting, or did you
Yeah.
expect that?
I did, because I've experienced that before. I don't know if you've ever watched a show where it's like a reality show. Like, I watch real estate shows often, and you're just in awe of these homes. And then you start thinking, how can people afford this lifestyle? And then you start, why don't I have this lifestyle?
Yeah.
Look at that closet. How do you, right? So I've spiraled like that before. And I've had to pull myself back, and like, that is just not reality for the majority of people. And so I see that. I absolutely see that, because I've felt it for a short period of time. Luckily, I know how to pull myself back in and then stay away from that type of show going forward. But absolutely.
Kristen, I just watched the Sylvester Stallone. It's called Sly. I think
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Netflix if you get a chance.
Yeah.
And I'd already watched the one on Arnold Schwarzenegger. And it's so funny to me that, Sly is certainly a crazy story, the way Rocky came about.
Oh, yeah.
But he started doing action movies because Arnold was doing them. And you would think both of them, hundreds of millions of dollars, box office smashes, but they were obsessed with beating the other. So
Right.
they didn't have any time to, take stock in what they'd accomplished or enjoy the
Right.
fruits of their labor. They're planning the next movie, who can have the most guns. And I found it humorous. But I remember a time when I was younger, I thought, if I just had $1 million, I'd be happy. I don't care if I work,
Yeah.
I'd be happy. But it doesn't work that way. Once you
No.
get to one level, you want the next level. And it really does take deliberate effort not to fall into that trap. And they both, even Arnold,
Yeah.
laughed and said, now he fully brags on Stallone, what a great writer, director, and all that. And he said,
Yeah.
it's funny now when I think back, but they really were obsessed with each other.
They were. And something that was a big takeaway for me, because I watched the Sylvester Stallone documentary just recently, and maybe you can remember this, maybe not, but what was the one thing, with everything he had and all his achievements, what was the one thing he wanted?
I thought it was family, time with family.
He wanted his father's approval.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
And his father was an asshole,
Oh,
basically,
yeah, that's right.
and was competing with him, and really just never congratulated him on his success. She was so jealous of his son. And on his deathbed, he finally said something, to the effect of, not that he was proud of him, but he basically gave him advice on his deathbed. But it was just wild. So it just shows you can have everything in the world when all you really want is someone to love you and be proud of you.
Kristen, I blanked for a minute, but I thought that what they said about Stallone is he knew how to touch a chord. There's so many people still trying to impress their father or mother, but that happens with a lot of guys. And his trainer was Mick, who actually played the original Penguin on the Batman series. But when Rocky got picked up for a title fight as a complete underdog, Mick shows up at his apartment and says, I want to train you. And do you remember Sly said that was unscripted? He just went off on him. You weren't
Yes.
there for me and all that. And it turns out he was speaking to his dad.
Yes.
But the unique part that no one expected was Mick leaves with his head bowed and he's walking down the street. And all of a sudden, Rocky runs and puts his arm around him. And they said it was symbolic that that's what Rocky wanted to do with his dad. And his writing came out. That's a great takeaway.
Yeah.
Let's look at some basic benefits, and this still comes from research of an attitude of gratitude. This information was taken from the Institute of Youth Development and Excellence. And by the way, I researched, before we use things, I researched this, and it looks like they're doing great things for youth, the IYDE, if anyone wants to look it up. Before we get into that, though, we must understand, and this is something that I've realized, is that gratitude and optimism run parallel. They're like cousins. If you see people who always see the glass half full or half empty, they're usually not grateful. And the people who see the glass half full are more grateful and they're happier. So since it's a season of Thanksgiving, maybe it's time, if you're listening, maybe it is time to do what Kristin did during the pandemic. Maybe you need to realign your priorities. Maybe you need to think about what's actually important. And if you're like me and you're driven, I've been vulnerable in this, Kristin. You know me. I'm always looking for the next adventure, and it used to be the martial arts. It used to be things like that. But now that I've slowed down some in those areas, I'm always looking. It's my personality, and I have to make myself take moments of gratitude and just sit and think and listen. And it really is. It's my personality, but that's not an excuse.
No, I'm like you, Ron. It's like you grind constantly. I always felt like, am I ever going to feel like what I have is enough, right? Personalities like ours, we're driven, but we just grind and grind and grind. Even if we're not physically doing something, we're mentally grinding at what we can do next. And you do. Personalities like ours, we have to pause and reflect. It's absolutely necessary.
Someone asked me that I hadn't seen in a long time about my company and what was going on. And of course, there's books and online training courses, and I'm speaking, and we've got a planner now on Amazon. And he just kept, I wasn't doing it to brag. He was just saying, tell me about what you got going on. So I did. And this person said, man, you've arrived. And I thought, you have no idea. I'm at the starting line. In my mind, I've not arrived. So I sometimes I hate that I think that way, but I really did in my mind. I'm just getting started. Are you kidding me?
I think that's good that you're like that, actually, because you think, does Elon Musk sit back and put his feet up on his desk? No, he's grinding also.
He could be miserable, but yes, he is.
He might be miserable, but just someone that just says, all right, I've arrived, and they kick back, generally that's going to be short-lived.
Kristin, I did a social media post, and this really was a deep moment for me. But when people get content, I basically said content's the enemy of greatness or something like that. And when people get content, they stop improving. But if you do look at world changers, if you do look at community changers and people who make a difference, they're not satisfied. That's true.
Right. But
we do have to have a few moments, and we're going to talk about that. This is a cliche now. It's a newer cliche, but be the best version of yourself. And I think in order to do that, there has to be gratitude if that's our goal.
Yeah.
What's some other benefits of gratitude, Kristin?
Yeah, and I touched on it, but definitely it improves your mental health. And if you're struggling with anxiety or depression, gratitude might be the last thing on your mind, understandably. But however, it turns out that gratitude could be a key component of helping you with your mental health. And so when we were doing our research, one study showed that participants who wrote gratitude letters regularly, they displayed significantly better mental health than those who didn't. So brain scans, even, they always say you want a true understanding of what's going on, look inside the body. So they had brain scans done, and they suggested that gratitude might even have the power to rewire our brains for the better.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's powerful stuff. Kristin, I'm going to say something controversial here. which I know
Please do.
I was getting ready to say Kristin's salivating, but everyone else.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not talking about, please hear me, listeners. I'm not talking about a serious mental health disorder. I'm talking about a lot of when people become miserable, ungrateful, depressed in a mild form. It's selfish. There is a lot of selfishness that aligns with some light forms of depression, because what you're doing is either complaining about what you don't have or you're envious about what someone else has. It's all about you in that moment. And, we're going to talk about some other things to go along with that. But if you want to improve your mental health, make it about someone else. The world doesn't revolve around you. Make it about other people. And that's why we get so much pleasure in serving. All right. The research shows also if you exercise gratitude, you have improved physical health, better sleep, and immunity. You're not even going to get sick as much.
Yeah.
And fortunately, neither of these require a visit, to the hospital. Gratitude has been shown to help with both of those areas, and may even be linked to reduce pain and improve cardiovascular health. And if you go back and you look at, is humor still a thing? We talk about dopamine and things that are released in your system when you smile. So you've got the medicine within you. You just have to exercise mindfulness and release that medicine.
Right. Absolutely. Our bodies are designed in a beautiful, miraculous way, and we just have to know how to unlock it. So something else that's important, and when you were talking about like the light depression and the selfishness, it made me think like nobody wants to be around someone that sucks the energy out of the room, right? So that's something else to consider. And with that, when people are practicing gratitude, you're going to have stronger social bonds. So it's no secret that people like to feel appreciated, and gratitude kept to yourself can have tremendous benefits, but expressing your gratitude makes it real to you and benefits the recipient.
Yeah.
We've talked about how you can say something out loud and you can trick your brain when you practice gratitude in the mirror, right? And you're saying things out loud. You're telling yourself that your brain needs to actually hear it come out of your mouth and then take it in through the ears. Might sound crazy, but you need to make sure you might be grateful internally, but you need to outwardly express it. And that's how you're going to get the full benefits of it.
Wow. Kristin, on a previous episode, I won't go in depth, but it also improves resilience. And I talked about the difference between resilience and efficacy, but resilience is that ability when you get knocked down to get back up. Gratitude is like a force that will pick you right back up and get you going again. And, I love these shows. We talked about it last week or a couple weeks ago that I'm watching Special Forces. It's where they take those celebrities and put them in some of the Special Forces training. And you can watch the mental attitude. And when people become a victim, when they start feeling sorry for themselves, they're gone. They might as well remove the armband. That's called voluntarily withdrawing. And they VW. And you see it coming. But if people can learn to have gratitude in the middle of the chaos, in the middle of their circumstances, it's going to make them resilient. Nothing can stop you if you have that attitude of gratitude.
I love that. I really do.
I want to transition a little bit because when we say these things, and even me sometimes, like when you're hosting the podcast, it's like Kristin and I have it all together. And that's not the case. But the stuff that I talk about on here, and I know Kristin's the same, we're growing and learning, but we are attempting to put these things in practice. But there's still times that things happen that I feel sorry for myself. Like, why didn't I? But at least now I've got this meter, this barometer that triggers that. And it's like, wait a minute. That's victim mentality. That's not victor mentality. So at least as you grow, you recognize it earlier and you can deal with it before it gets too strong. But let's talk about practicing gratitude. The idea of beginning a gratitude practice feels overwhelming or even cheesy. When you wrote when you mentioned, I got to be honest with you, Kristin, and this was from research, when you said people that write gratitude letters, in my brain immediately, I'm like, who does that? But I'm sure it works. I don't know that I'm going to be able to put that in practice, but but it's true. But keep in mind, gratitude doesn't have to be difficult. You don't have to write a letter. You can start small by setting aside time each day to think or write maybe 3 things. Or if you buy the Forward High Performance Planner, is that a cheap plug? Hey, there is a little section.
Take them where you can.
There's a little section that actually says, what am I thankful for today? Right, like, what am I grateful for today? We put that in there intentionally for you. So you can just take a little bit of time, even if it's 3 sentences. It might be a prayer, thanking God you woke up, thanking God you're alive, you're not in a hospital, all of these things. But and set a goal for yourself to tell someone that you appreciate them. Man, I just got a phone call with a branch chief that worked with me. We were on the phone an hour, and that's a long time for me. And we just reminisced. He lives in Ohio now. We hadn't seen each other in a while. By the way, we're going to get to see each other next week. And It was so rewarding to get to talk to him. We were in the trenches every day together. And then poof, we don't see each other for a long time. So maybe rekindle some relationships, tell some people. And Kristin and I think you can notice one thing about us. We've been very quick to mention people who had a positive influence on us, from our parents to I feel like I know your Jasons because you've mentioned them so much.
Exactly, right?
And I've mentioned Dave Stevens and Dr. Sam Samples and these people that have influenced me. We talk about our gratitude for our families. And that keeps us going. That keeps us ticking. That keeps us, if you could see Kristin and I trying to arrange our 3-hour time difference to record a podcast or research for a podcast, sometimes it's challenging. Yeah. But we know the chemistry. We're thankful for the way our values align and the way we approach. Like, we hardly ever have a hiccup on this podcast as far as not the technology, but as far as putting stuff together. Sometimes Kristin says, you're a complete idiot. We're not doing that. But other than that, no, false. I'm serious. I'm grateful for that. You have people that you align with and you do projects together. But I do think that keeps us ticking, Kristin, that we're grateful and we see growth on the podcast, or we see people commenting on Facebook. That makes me feel good. I'm like, people are actually listening and enjoying the podcast. And I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. Is this the segment where I'm supposed to share what I'm grateful for? Okay.
Just
sounds
do it,
good.
Kristin. Just do it.
I'm just going to dive right in. It's funny. So I want to recognize 4 leaders that have had a substantial impact on me in the business world. They're all in banking. Jason Foreman, Jason McCleskey, Laura Green, Kim Handsaker. These 4 leaders have really helped shape me. They all worked with me at a different point in my leadership career, but they've all added something very beneficial to me and really helped me become the person I am today. So I want to thank those 4. And, on a personal side, I'm thankful for having parents my parents are divorced. They didn't get divorced until later in life, but they are best friends and we have all of our family events together. And I'm just so thankful for them, their ability to be adults and to remain friends and just all of the positives that have come from that for my sister and I, and for my kids, their grandkids, right? So I tell my parents how thankful I am for that all the time. And I know that's not always going to be the case, but it's very appreciated from my end. And we were all able to sit together today and have Thanksgiving dinner together because of their ability to put aside their personal issues with each other.
Kristin, I think you skipped maybe an email you got about what you were supposed to read, who you were thankful for.
Oh, yeah. I'm thankful for Ron Ward for being an amazing partner.
I'm so shocked. Like, that caught me so off guard.
I have so much.
That caught me so off guard. I'll send you the money later. I'm also, and I'm going to get myself in trouble, Cassie Roop. Neither of us know Cassie, but she just finished a marathon. We're so proud of her. And she's administrator, a big supporter of the podcast. Jeff Flug. I mean, he tells everyone about our podcast.
Thank you, Jeff.
We can go on and on. My daughter, Haley, that was in the car wreck. She's one of our biggest fans on the podcast. And she comments. And for those of you, and I just don't want to make a mistake here. There's several people that you comment a lot, and I just feel great when I see that, and you bring good value. It is a value add when you make a comment in the Facebook group or otherwise. So just a time, and Kristin, I'm traveling home to Virginia to see family. It's been a long time, and I'm just really grateful. It's a great season of life.
Yep, absolutely. Very thankful for everyone as well.
All right, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving. Be the leader you're meant to be.
We'll see you next week.
The Dirty Side of Leadership podcast is brought to you by Forward Operations. If you'd like to book Ron or Kristin for speaking events, training, or executive coaching, visit forwardoperations.com. Be the leader you're meant to be.